Hello, my name is Greta Chapman, and I'm the moderator for this panel, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us on preserving the flood story and our panel members. I'm going to read a short introduction of each of the panel members, and then they will share their information in the order that they're seating. Corey Christensen has been employed with the Journey Museum and Learning Center for 6 years, most recently in the role of researcher. Throughout her tenure at the Journey Museum and Learning Center, Corey has researched and set up 14 temporary exhibits and made multiple presentations both online and at the museum, with many of them on the topic of the 1972 Black Hills flood. She has degrees in history and English from the University of South Dakota and a master's in museum studies from the University of Oklahoma. And last night was the ribbon cutting for the Black Hills flood exhibit, and it is an incredible exhibit that you'll want to make sure and visit as well. Seth Tupper is a veteran journalist and serves as a supervising senior producer at South Dakota Public Broadcasting. And last night, they also had the premiere showing of the Surviving the 1972 SDPB documentary, and he has also worked on a book with Johnny Sundby, and he'll talk about that as well. He worked for Rapid City Journal, the Mitchell Daily Republic, and the Daily Globe in Worthington, Minnesota. He has authored Calvin Coolidge in the Black Hills. He's a contributor to Fedor's guidebook, The Black Hills of South Dakota, and again, as I said, co-author of Surviving the 72 Flood. And he has won a National Edward R. Murrow Award in 2021 for investigative reporting. Adam Weaver has served as an analyst for the city's Geographic Information System, the GIS, since 2019. The department provides mapping services, data, and technical support to the staffs of the City of Rapid City and Pennington County and to the public. Weaver has developed a number of innovative mapping items, including special flood mapping features, allowing online visitors globally to review historical and current information about sites along the 1972 flood path, now the site of the city's greenway. Adam is also very much involved in caving, and he has an international conference of cavers that will be here this weekend. So he's a man of many interests, as they all are. And with that, I'll ask Corey to come forward to kick things off.
Hello. As Greta said, I'm Corey Christensen. I am a researcher with the Journey Museum and Learning Center here in Rapid City. I am very, very honored to be able to speak to you today about what the Journey Museum and Learning Center is doing to preserve the history and continue to research the history of the 1972 Black Hills flood. I want to start by saying a little bit about the exhibit that we just opened, because I have spent a lot of time working on it through the Journey Museum and Learning Center. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming next. The 50th Commemoration Exhibit opened yesterday. We were very, very proud to host SDPB's documentary premiere as well. This exhibit covers the 1972 Black Hills flood. The goal of this exhibit was to remember, honor, and commemorate the flood. In this exhibit, we talk about multiple stories that a lot of people might know. We do mention cloud seeding, so if that's something you're interested in, please come look at that. But we also try to tell stories that maybe aren't so well known, so more about the volunteerism in the recovery process of the flood. We talk a little bit more about response of the political nature of the flood. And so this exhibit is a huge undertaking of information, and we hope you come and see it. I especially want to recognize Simpson's Printing for helping us create this exhibit. Haley at Simpson's did a phenomenal job helping make the vision come to life. So before I get into what the Journey Museum is actively doing now, I would like to talk about what we have started to do and will continue to do as the years go on. So the Journey is actually changing the way we talk about the Black Hills flood. So as you can hear, I'm saying Black Hills flood instead of Rapid City flood. That is because this flood impacted not only Rapid City, but Keystone, Nemo, Box Elder, and other communities up and down the different waterways in the Black Hills. We want to recognize the fact that there were fatalities in those different communities. And so we encompass it all by saying Black Hills flood. I also say fatalities instead of victims. And that is because we consider everyone who was in the Black Hills, in those communities the night of the flood, a victim. They lost homes, families, family members, friends, mementos. You know, their lives were kind of changed horrifically that night. Fatalities are those who lost their lives. And then we also say commemoration instead of anniversary. Anniversary has a more positive, upbeat connotation, and commemoration is more somber. And this is a somber event. So what's next for the Journey Museum? Well, I do still live in Pierce, so I'm still doing remote work and still doing research for the Journey Museum, and I love it. We are working on verifying fatalities. We want to make sure that every single fatality that is listed on the fatality list is accurate. We also want to make sure that every single fatality is recognized. And so we have been in collaboration with the Rapid City Police Department to do that. We are also looking at political response. And I know that doesn't sound as interesting, but in 2019 when COVID hit, and in early 2020 when COVID hit, and Governor Noem was talking about how South Dakota is going to respond, it was very, very similar to how Governor Knipe responded the night of June 9th, 1972. And so we're looking at the implications of political response to a disaster. Other ongoing projects, we're going to look at mental health, because that's always a very important aspect of recovery. We're going to look at how the flood affected mental health in the community, and we're going to look at how different rates changed after the flood, how crime rates changed, how marriage rates changed, and that sort of thing. And then I want to talk a little bit about what the library is doing. I am honored today to be kind of the mouthpiece for the library, since they are actively at the library at the moment. The Rapid City Library has been collecting oral histories from those who lived during the Black Hills flood. And they would really appreciate more people coming in and talking about their experiences the night of the flood. So if you would like to talk to the Rapid City Public Library, you can call them or email them and make an appointment. They're really great about talking you through your experiences, and it will be recorded. And that's such an important part to preserve the flood history, is to have people come in and talk about their experiences. Even if you don't think your experience is worthwhile, even if you're like, well, I just lived in Rapid City, but I was up on the hill, or I wasn't, that it doesn't matter. Because what we are looking for is every piece of information that we can gather will help us put together a more thorough look at the history of the flood. I'm more than willing to take questions at the end. For right now, I'm going to turn it over to Seth, and he's going to tell you a little bit about what he's been doing.
You guys wouldn't mind pulling up that website again? That'd be great. So, as was mentioned in the introduction, I'm Seth Tupper. I grew up in Weston Springs and Kimball, South Dakota, and went to South Dakota State University and got a journalism degree there, and worked in newspapers for about 18 years before I switched to South Dakota Public Broadcasting. And about a year ago, I got a call from Johnny Sunby. Many of you would know from Johnny Sunby Photography here in town. He's an ex-newspaper photographer who also worked at the Journal, Rapid City Journal, before I was there. And he told me that he had always had this idea and desire to put out a photo book on flood survivors. And he wanted to do it for the 50th commemoration. He was wondering if I would work with him on interviewing flood survivors, writing their stories, and he would photograph the flood survivors, and we'd put out a book on that. And so I agreed to do that, but I thought it would be a great collaboration if I could get video and audio of all the interviews in addition to just, written notes and things. And we could do something with those stories for South Dakota Public Broadcasting. So we did that. About a year ago, we set out on a journey to interview. We interviewed 27 flood survivors who had stories ranging from being trapped in homes and trees to being National Guard soldiers who were responding and rescuing people from the flood, to a nurse who treated people in one of the hospitals here in the response, to people who were involved in the funeral business who had to deal with that end of things. And we interviewed most of these people at the location where their story occurred. So if they formerly had a house along a creek, we went to that site and photographed them there, interviewed them there, and just really tried to act as a conduit for these people's stories. And so we put out the book in time for the 50th commemoration. The book's called Surviving the 72 Flood, and it's got the stories of each survivor in there, along with portraits of those people. And what I really liked about Johnny's idea is, so often when we think about the flood and the history of the flood, we see pictures and imagery of all the wreckage and the wrecked cars and homes and everything. And, every one of those wrecked cars and homes had people who owned them or lived in them. And I just thought it was a really great approach to show the faces of these people and attach the faces and the stories to some of those photos that we so often see of just, what was ruined. But after we wrapped up the book, at SDPB, we got busy on a couple of other things. If you listen to SDPB Radio, In the Moment is our midday show. Since February, we've been airing every Wednesday. We aired little 2 to 3 minute segments from the interviews, where we let people tell their flood story in their own words. If you scroll down on the page, those are all on this webpage here, which is sdpb.org/flood. So on the bottom is all individual people telling their stories, in the audio in their own words. And we also compiled a 4-part podcast and kind of moved along from west to east down the creek with everybody we interviewed, that tells what they were experiencing as the flood was happening and how they survived the flood. And we also did a video documentary, which, as mentioned, was debuted last night at the Journey Museum. It's called Surviving the 72 Flood as well. It's an hour-long documentary, and if you weren't able to see that, it'll be on TV tonight on SDPB1 at 9 Central, 8 Mountain. And you can also just watch the video embedded here on this website, sdpb.org/flood. And so, as we're talking about preserving stories, and I always bring up the fact that I know some of these stories are painful for people to hear. These are some tough stories, some of these things that people went through and endured and suffered. And but the reason we want to tell them is for future generations. We really want to record these stories before they're lost, so that future generations will know and understand just what people went through and how great the suffering was, and the pain that was endured during the flood, so that they understand on a deeper level why it's so important to have good policy concerning the floodplain, why it's so important to listen to early warnings, and why it's so important to have warning systems and funding for the National Weather Service and things like that. So we hope we've done that, and we hope that these stories will will be there for the 75th and the 100th, so that people can look back and not just see it as a historical event, but actually hear from the people and understand on a deeper level, what people really went through when this happened. So that's our little part of it, and thank you for listening. I'll turn it over to Adam.
As she mentioned before, my name is Adam Weaver. I'm the GIS analyst for Rapid City in Pennington County. And if you guys can bring up the website again, the flood website first, that'd be great. So I'm actually gonna we're gonna look at some maps that we've made to commemorate the flood, and we're gonna start on the website. But I have to kind of drive the show, so I'm gonna sit at this table over here. So where we actually want to start, if it's not working. All right, there we go. Where we actually want to start is, I believe, here. Okay, so if you go to the website rapidcityflood.com, that will bring you here. Okay, and this has all the information from the flood, and one of the things that's going to stay here, as in their impacts, are the maps. And so I want to close the other two instances of the map just for computer speed purposes here. And so if you scroll down, there's two different mapping products that we made here. The first is photo-based. So if you look at this map, this map is kind of driven off of the photos, and it has this screen that pops up that tells you about the purpose of the map. And then it kind of looks like this, where you have the floodway outlined in red, and then as you scroll into the map, which is pretty user-friendly, the photos that are available in this portion of the map populate on the left side. And as I mentioned before in the last group, our hope is to get more and more of these photos. In the last group, a gentleman from USGS has said he has all kinds of photos to add, so hopefully we'll have a number of more photos. Right now, there are 41 sites highlighted on the map. And one of the things that's on the map are the homes and streets that were removed following the flood. And Ellen, who's sitting, I think, 3 rows behind me, was kind enough to take the time to digitize all these homes and streets. And so we're fairly confident with their location. And what becomes an interesting feature of this map product and the other one as well is that they work on mobile phones. So as you're standing in what we're looking at here, which I believe is the golf course, you can see that you're actually standing in a home that was there before, or in a street that was previously there. So it's a feature that it's kind of a surreal experience when you're out there in the parks, because you can see specifically what was there where you are. The other map has the same data, but it's presented a different way. And this map is completely data driven. It has a lot more information in it, and this map will. Because it's built in the same platform as RapidMap, which many people are familiar with, it takes a little bit more time to kind of get a feel for how to operate the map, but it's capable of running a lot more information, so more and more things will get added to this specific product. And like the other map, it has a larger description of why the maps were made. And one of the reasons we made these maps was that as folks who were here for the flood get older or move away, and those communities aren't as tied to Rapid City as they once were, they can still come back and look at kind of the community, how it's growing, because the imagery on this map will continue to become new imagery. As you scroll through the layers of the map, you can see the buildings that are there now, not just on imagery, but in the outlines of the buildings, and the streets that are being built in Rapid City growing, but still be able to look back and see what was there before. And so it lets people who aren't able to see these places look at them more easily. And again, with this map, you can zoom in, you can do many different things with this map. And as you zoom in, again, there's the homes that we talked about before. And the one thing that you can do, which is unique to this version of the map, and hopefully it works this time. Last time I was sitting in the back of the room and I could not read the screen, so it made this part very challenging. And actually, man, I still cannot read the black thing there. So as you click on them, it'll bring this up, and you can see a picture of the park today, which is what did not work last time. So if you're not familiar, you can say, okay, this is what this looks like, even though I live there and now I live in Florida. So and even though they're not turned on at this very moment, they're within the map. You can even see pictures of the baseball fields and everything like that on the map as well. So it has two different ways to look at it. You can be in the park and see what was there before, and then also see, if you're not in the park, you're somewhere else, see what is there today. Yeah. So and then the other part of this map is, so much like Rapid Map, which we can't really do a tutorial on how to use every feature of the map, but there are many different layers over here that you can pick and turn on and off, like the park facilities, which are the fields and tennis courts and such, like I mentioned before. And so those are all available in the map. And then kind of like I mentioned before, on the previous map, the outline of the floodplain and the flood itself are located on the map as well, depending on where you're zoomed into the map to see them. So the hope of these maps is not for them to be a snapshot in time necessarily, but for them to grow as we get more information. Yesterday I got a map from the Rapid City Journal that they published in June 26, 1972, that will become a background image for this map. So you'll be able to turn on the 1972 Journal's map as well in this map as soon as I get it embedded into the program. So as we get new information, and Ellen is kind enough to make more information, she's sitting back there, that will get added to this map, and so it won't just be a single snapshot. As time goes on, it'll be bigger and kind of better, I guess, in a sense. So it's kind of a lasting project. So that's what I have for the map, and I'm sure there'll be questions on it. So I'll go up to the front now.
One other item that I just want to share about preserving the stories is at 4 o'clock today, there will be a public program for the ribbon cutting of a storyboard exhibit that's 50 feet wide and 11 feet high. It's very large, and it's in a high traffic area here at the monument for the purpose of continuing to share the story of both the lives that were lost and the greenway that continues to evolve. And it's a really important piece of how the information that continues to be gathered and how that dynamic space will change as we learn and grow and have the greenway space as well. So with that, if there are any questions for any of the panelists. Yes, sir, in the back.
You mentioned the library. I sent my brother-in-law over to the library this morning because he owned a big front mobile at the time of the flood. Somebody over there told him nothing was going on there. He had to come to the civic center.
I believe that it is. I was under the impression that they were doing oral histories today. I do think that they would prefer an appointment, so they make sure they have the right people in place to take those interviews. So if you give them a call and kind of tell them what you want to talk about, they'll be able to help you.
Yes, sir.
I believe it's actually her department.
Come on, Bill. I've not actually heard of any active movement for finding the 5 missing people. There's a very interesting picture that I've come across of people sitting in Wasta on the bridge, watching water go by, looking for debris and for bodies. And so I think what that references is that there is such a huge amount of space to search that I don't even know if people would know where to begin to look for them. I will say that I believe I know for a fact that there are 4 of the 5 headstones are there in cemeteries, and I believe the 5th one, I'm not sure if he's in Rapid City or if they moved the headstone to a different place. But they are identified with headstones. But I think the amount of water and creeks and rivers that would have to be looked through, nobody really knows where to start.
To kind of add to your question, though, so there's 2018 full county high-res LiDAR now. And so, one of the things with looking for that kind of thing, you have to have a model with which you would try to nail down that kind of thing. And I think because of the time, it would become very difficult because you don't know where to try to model it, right? So it would be very difficult unless you knew specifically where to target the LiDAR, right?
I think the reason I asked is I taught at Clipper School back in the 60s, and it's one of my students is one of the 5 that have never been found.
There's a question over here.
It's for Corey. Your exhibit that you have on display, how long is that going to be there for people to view?
I will say with certainty it will be up through Native American Day, which is early October. The executive director of the Journey Museum, Troy Kilpatrick, who is floating around here, I think he's in the other room right now, he and I will be in discussions to keep it up for longer, just so that we can continue to tell the story, not just through the summer. So it's for sure up through October, potentially longer, and we will release information as we make decisions.
Just a sidebar that Corey and I visited about the digitization of exhibits as well. And so hopefully what people will take away from these last 2 days is that the information won't be lost. It'll continue to be shared, and stories will still continue to be forthcoming. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
This is for Adam. Adam, when you were showing that map across from Sioux Park, you actually showed the cul-de-sac and the house that I lived in. Do you know from the records, all of those houses, who was in them during the flood? Do you have that record?
I don't think that we do in my office, but I think those records exist. So one thing too, kind of like I mentioned in the last thing, is if folks, so if you had a picture of your home and you would like for it put into that polygon, I can make it so you click on it, you can see it. Yeah. So if you email the GIS office, that kind of thing, but you have to have a way of telling me, maybe even bring up the map and just circle it in paint. This is the one, and then I can do it pretty easily. That kind of thing. That's what I'm saying. So this can grow, especially in this platform, because this platform is capable of showing a tremendous amount of information and storing it. And this specific one, the other map is limited a little bit by space, but this one, even though it's a little more cumbersome to operate, can hold a tremendous amount of data. It's the same platform that holds every piece of parcel information for the entire county.
So Adam, maybe you and I can visit later about, similar to the library's oral history project that's been ongoing now for over a decade. We can visit about that information that you just described to be on the Rapid City flood site. So again, the unveiling of this map with the homes and the buildings is really substantial. And so as Adam has described, having pictures come in to go with it. So again, things will continue.
And along with what you're just saying, okay, we've heard that here because we're attending this session. But is there something when you go to this map, is there a page or a thing in there that you can put on to tell people who are in Florida or wherever that you're looking for information or details of others have it to help them?
Right, and yeah, so we don't have that on the map. And one of the things you have to think about too is the logistics of that become very difficult, because unless you have someone specifically explaining how the information has to come in, because if someone just sends me a picture of a home in Rapid City from 1971, and I don't know specifically where it is, it becomes impossible to pin it to that structure. So it's very hard to describe that on a website and someone will actually read, because it would be fairly lengthy. So I mean, I think to Greta's point,
let me save you.
yeah, to Greta's point, we should have some sort of like formal contact form on the real website, on the the
An interface.
1972 flood website.
The past librarian is coming out in me.
Right, exactly. If that makes sense, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, we can. There can be a page that has that information in a form and makes that possible.
Seth, where can we find your book at?
Well, wherever books are sold, but yeah, no, it's in all the local, anywhere you'd buy a book. The Journey has some, I believe, and Prairie Edge and Mitzi's, and anywhere in town that you'd buy local history books would have them. So yeah.
Well, and we also talked about again, rapidcityflood.com. It's an aggregator to pull together these kinds of things, to have a biography page of the publications, both present and past, and those copies being available in X. Some of those would be digitized, some of those would be for sale, but to have that biography page that's another one of the check the boxes from this too. So just a reminder of activities. Daryl, do you want to do a quick this afternoon? Daryl has been very much the instrumental person of putting together these last 2 days. So in addition to applause for the panelists, I'd also ask that for Daryl Shoemaker.
Thank you, Greta. So just an overview of what we have left yet today. This afternoon, we've got our final panel session. We get a little bit of an extra time in there. We have an extra panelist in each of the sessions, but from 2 to 3:45 in these same two rooms, we'll have a group of retired reporters, editors, station managers, people who here in Rapid City had covered the flood and boots on the ground and can really share what they went through. So we're really looking forward to hearing their stories. That'll be one of the panels this afternoon. The other panel will be a group from USGS School of Mines talking about the flood, the history of flood in the hills, discussion of some of the impacts that the flood had here and what we've learned from it. So that's two big panels for you this afternoon from 2 to 3:45. Greta mentioned that at 4 o'clock today is the unveiling of the storyboard wall, and that will be over between if you go over to the Summit Arena, it'll be in the corridor between the Barnett Fieldhouse and the new Summit Arena, and that large corridor will get a lot of foot traffic and will really tell the story of the flood. So we're encouraging you to come out for that 4 o'clock dedication. Then after that, we'll have a no-host reception at 5 o'clock in the LaCroix Hall downstairs. There's some static displays for you to view at 5 o'clock. Again, it's a no-host reception. That leads into our evening activities at 6 p.m. Dakota Choral Union will have a half-hour performance in LaCroix Hall, and that leads into our interview with Mayor Don Barnett, veteran journalist, award-winning journalist Jack Caudill will be interviewing Don, kind of in an informal kind of a fireside chat sort of format, and there'll be some engagement with the audience as well this evening. So that starts at 6:30, also in LaCroix Hall. And then tomorrow, Mayor Barnett will be over at the Journey with a day after the flood presentation. That will be over at the Journey Museum. So that kind of gives you the roundup of activities yet today. So, yes, sir. We'll be recording all of that, and then that will be going up on the websites, and it won't be a live stream, but we'll be recording it and putting it up, yes. We really appreciate everyone coming out to listen to the panels this morning. Very informative. I really thank our panelists and our moderators taking time out of their schedule to share their knowledge and their input. And really what we're trying to do as a community is, it's been 50 years, but wanting to make sure that this story, not only about the flood, but also the Greenway moving forward, what the community has done moving forward, that story continues to be told. So thank you very much.